That's not okay. I'll put it that way, because you've got to be able to live your life the way life was intended for you. Controlling mothers is a topic that rarely gets discussed. And I think it's something we need to pay a little bit more attention to. We're in the era of mothers who tend to be helicopter parents, who are very protective, maybe overly protective, that may have good intentions but negatively impacts their child or adult child. We're in a time where a conversation about controlling parents or mothers is a little bit more accepted than it was in the past. But here's the sad reality. We don't have a lot of research on controlling mothers and how they impact their adult children. Most of our research is about children or adolescents, but rarely do we have research that talks about the negative impact of controlling mothers on adult children. My name is Tamara. I'm internationally and I'm board certified as a trauma therapist. I'm licensed in mental health, and I run my private practice treating children, teens, and families, as well as adults who are dealing with trauma. Let's go ahead and jump in. There's a couple of concepts that I want you to keep in mind when thinking about this topic of controlling mothers. The first important concept is something known as maternal separation anxiety. And the research behind this is that the parent tries to keep the child or adolescent as close to them as possible, sometimes being right under them literally, in order to maintain closeness, because of a fear that that child or that adolescent would get too far away from them, which would then stir anxiety in them. It's maternal separation anxiety. It really is the parent's inability to self-regulate and maybe even have control over their own thoughts. This kind of anxiety may come from a good place of intention, but it can ultimately be harmful. Just think about it. There you are, an adolescent, 16 years of age. Your mom has been there with you, right, through and through for many years and has been very loving to you and caring. But now that you've hit 16 and you've got your driver's license and you have relationships and you want to go to parties or you want to go out and learn things or travel, you feel your mom kind of pull back the reins a little bit. You feel that resistance, and you may have wondered why. Why all of a sudden, now that I'm becoming independent, do you want to hold me back? And part of that, again, is that maternal separation anxiety. It's, I'm going to hold you as close to me as I possibly can. And that kind of separation anxiety may manifest itself over time as manipulation and control. That manipulation and control has been regarded in research as emotional manipulation, and it is overwhelming. It's, the emotional manipulation of the things that you want to do, where you want to go, why you want to go, who you want to be with, who you don't want to be with. It's all emotional manipulation to make those kind of decisions and experiences very difficult for you. Now, this may be intentional with a narcissistic parent, and it may be unintentional with a very dependent and emotionally needy parent. There's also a lack of respect of individuality as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult. With a parent like this, that maternal separation anxiety causes that parent to really deny your ability to have independence, right? They also push back on things that you want to do that makes you that individual. Holding the reins so tightly is not only making your relationship with the mother, very difficult, but it's also creating places of vulnerability in your own life. Common issues that you are likely to see with a parent who has this maternal anxiety or this deep-seated need to control you is overprotection. Overprotection doesn't do much of anything, right? It causes you to want to push back. It also causes you to run into the arms of somebody that maybe your mother doesn't like, but you like, right? It kind of pushes you further down that road that they don't want you on. That overprotection also prevents you from experiencing life as it is is. And so then you're kind of pampered and you're kind of, living life in the shell, not knowing how to maneuver to make things work or how to manage certain things. And then there's also sometimes excessive criticism. You shouldn't have worn that. Maybe you should have worn a little bit more of this. Maybe you shouldn't go out with her on a date. Maybe you shouldn't go out with him on a date. Maybe you should have bought that car over there. That would have been better for you. I know you very well because I'm your mother, and mothers know their children. I've raised you. I've been with you so long. Probably something that you've heard over and over and over, right? So that excessive criticism is normal. There's also this unrealistic standard of the relationship and of you in life, period, right? The standards that parent has of you is way up there. And, this kind of a mother may get disappointed or offended if you don't meet their standards. There's also poor or no boundaries whatsoever. This is the kind of controlling mother who may want to know what's going on in your marriage. They may want to know what's going on in the delivery room. They may actually want to be in the delivering room with you. There's absolutely this disconnect from reality with these kind of parents, or they do see it and don't care. Sometimes it's really hard to tell which one it is. There's also a fear of losing control, right? If you have a controlling mother, there is likely this fear of losing you. And if there's maternal separation anxiety, it gets even worse, right? Because the parent doesn't want to say, go ahead and do what you need to do. Be a butterfly, be a bird, go ahead and fly and create your own life and create your own standards. They don't want that to happen, because then that triggers within them all of these symptoms right here. And they don't want to deal with that, right? So what do? They cling to you and they hold you in that spot so that you don't get away from them. There's also this fear of outside criticism, right? They don't want you to do anything that's going to cause the neighbors to criticize them, that's going to cause extended family to criticize them, right? If they keep you under lock and keep you under control, then they can control how everybody else sees you. There's a major resistance to boundaries. You may find that, for example, if you get married to someone, this kind of a controlling mother may not show respect to your husband, right? Because there's a boundary there. You now have somebody else in your life. You now are making decisions with him or her. You are trying to live a life based on your expectations and your values and your morals and, your spouse's or partner's morals. And a controlling mother doesn't really care about that. They care about what's going on the inside of them. And even if they may be coming from a place of good intention, a lot of their behaviors tend to be toxic. You want to know, is my mother the controlling, manipulative, and triangulating type that's narcissistic and cold and cruel? Or is my mother coming from a place of good intention, but she's going about this all wrong? Now, you may be wondering, how does this kind of dynamic impact me in the long run? Well, let's think about trauma. It may not be post-traumatic stress disorder, but it can certainly be a form of family trauma, because what's happening in this dynamic with your mother is that you are losing the ability to be you. You are losing the ability to have individuality. You are losing the ability to make decisions for yourself. You're losing the ability to experience autonomy outside of the parental control. And that in and of itself can be very abusive. Think about traumatic bonding, for example. Sometimes that's a very controlling dynamic, and that person who has you in that trauma bond really is controlling how you interact with other people, how you see them, how you see yourself, and how you see the relationship, right? Learn a little bit more up here at this link at the end of this video. I talk about traumatic bonding, but this can be a trauma bond as well with a parent, a mother who is extraordinarily controlling. And in order for you to remain a piece of her puzzle, right, to her life, you're probably going to have a hard time stepping outside of that. And that mother knows that. There's a loss of social connection in these kind of controlling parent-child relationships, because your mom's not going to let you be a friend over there, or be a friend over there, or be a friend over there. They want to keep you on their schedule, on their time, in front of them, and locked down at all times. And so research suggests that a loss of social connectedness or connections can actually lead to depression and anxiety. It can also lead to biological changes or neurobiological changes in the brain. Lack of autonomy can also be pretty traumatic, right? Because it almost makes you feel, and it can make you feel, I should say, like you're in prison, like you were in jail, What happens there is the mother kind of gets so anxious and so controlling and possessive that it's really hard for her to understand that she is overly involved. which steals your autonomy. And so now you're starting to feel like a prisoner, or you feel like you're being controlled every way you turn. And no human being wants to feel that way. Think about, for example, wildlife. I think wildlife is a good example for this particular scenario that, they don't like to be captured. Wildlife is wildlife, right? They live on the open. They're used to, finding food for themselves, surviving on their own, getting what they need, feeding their young, engaging in survival, attacking whatever prey they need to attack to eat to survive. They have a very loose kind of a life, right? There's no binds. There's nothing keeping them held back from living a free life. And so, once you capture one of those animals, sometimes they either get depressed, they experience learned helplessness. Here's a definition of that right here. They also experience depression, anxiety, stress. Research studies on stress and depression and anxiety have been done on rats. And a lot of these studies find that the rats, because they are captured and they are being studied, sometimes they become depressed and anxious because they are confined and they don't want to be confined, right? So wildlife is like that. You confine them and they may die, or they may get angry, or they may get resentful, or they may become depressed or disengaged, right? The same thing happens to human beings. Psychological control can also lead to codependency and traumatic bonding, right? It is mind control. It's psychological control. And here's what's scary. The mother is, the most important piece of the puzzle for a same gender child. Research suggests that the same gender parent is often the most important and the most influential in that child's life. So if you were a daughter and your mother was very possessive and controlling over you, it is likely going to create some issues for you that's going to be passed down either to your children, or you're going to display some things in romantic relationships, work relationships, and friendships. It is not a good situation. That psychological mind control can destroy you. There's also a development of relationships and behaviors that mimics that controlling relationship that you've had with your mother, whether you're a male or a female. It develops you in such a way that you begin to show behaviors that are not consistent with who you really are. You've picked up those same controlling, toxic behaviors. So what is happening to you here? Well, there's a lot that's going on here. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that when you are psychologically controlled by your mother, by a female who has cared for you, raised you, taken care of you, there's a hindrance of autonomy and competence. It's hard for you to build autonomy, independence, confidence, right? And competence when you are being held back behind jail bars, right? You can't explore, you can't grow, you can't learn, you can't do anything. You feel stuck. And that's a typical reaction to a parent like this. You also want to keep in mind that this sets the stage for how a relationship works in adulthood. And so the relationship you've had with your mother has been negative if they have psychologically controlled you. And that can then create within you this inability to understand how a healthy, balanced, and well relationship should be. So you may actually begin to perpetuate your mother's behaviors into your adult relationship. There's something known as interparental conflict, meaning that there's constant conflict within the relationship. So, that kind of conflict can follow you for many years. It can also cause internalizing and externalizing behaviors such as, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, self-harm. Those are internalizing behaviors or internalized behaviors. And externalizing behaviors could be anger and outbursts and gambling and substance abuse and, fighting and assaulting people. And, these are outward behaviors that are occurring because your life has been so turned around by the psychological control of your mother. Another thing is usually, mothers who control their children and they are psychologically controlling and they seek to keep you close to them as much as possible. They know how to engage you in what's called guilt induction. There's this guilt induction that happens to you. Something the parent does causes you to feel guilt. The parent may say, oh, do you not love me anymore? Do you not want to have anything to do with me anymore? Do you feel like I've ruined your life, right? All of that induces guilt within you. And so it's really hard for you to move forward when you feel guilty. There's also an inability to differentiate your emotions from theirs, right? Is that my mom's thinking and emotions emotions, or is it mine? I don't really know, because I've been inside of this world of psychological manipulation for so long. I can't figure out what's me and what's her, right? The other thing is there's poor identity formation. Poor identity formation. Who am I? What do I want? What do I need? What do I like? What don't I not like? Right? How do I think? How do I see things? What are my morals? What are my values? What do I not want in my life? It's hard to figure that out, right? Once you've been under clear and intense psychological control, it's really hard for you to step out and figure out who you are and what you want in life. This fear of stepping out and showing other people that you have a brain, you have a mind, you have morals, you have ethics, and you want to exercise them. You may find yourself almost retreating into this world of fear and social anxiety because you've never really had a parent, a mother who supported your individuality, your independence. You know, it's always been psychological and emotional control. Check out these videos right here. I talk about this just a little bit more. These videos can give you an insight. This happens to me every video that I do, believe it or not. And it happens to be anonymous. Check out these videos right here. It's going to tell you a little bit more about the dynamics of these kind of parents. Thank you so much for being with me in today's video. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to get more like this. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.